Hi there, Titans, and welcome back to another Titan Academy video. Today we'll be talking about how to validate the fields on your form in Titan Web. So I have a simple form here set up where essentially I'm creating an account and a contact, and I also want my end user to tick this box if they agree to my terms and service. Now, on my button, I have two separate pushes set up, one for account and one for contact. Now, this might not always be best practice to have one Salesforce action running after another instead of just adding them to one Salesforce action node. So just note that. But for today's example, we'll separate them into two different pushes just to demonstrate what some of the issues with validation might be. The first issue I want to show you is I'm first creating an account and then I'm creating a contact. And if I look at my form, I can see that I have some mandatory fields for my account and I have some mandatory fields for my contact. And in my case, I do not want to create an account unless the contact is also created for that account. So let's demonstrate what this looks like right now. All right, some company. And I'm purposely not going to fill out the first name, last name, and email here. I'm also not going to tick this checkbox, and I'm going to go ahead and push to Salesforce. Now notice I did get a validation telling me that my first name is mandatory, my last name is mandatory, and my email is mandatory. And that is because these fields are included in a push to Salesforce, and because they're included in a push to Salesforce, or they are mapped in a push to Salesforce, they are going to trigger validation when that push runs. Now that's fine in terms of preventing my contact push from running, but you can see that my account push ran, and that's because my account field was filled out. And so even though I failed validation for my contact push, I did not fail validation for my account push. And now the account was created and the contact was not created. The other issue I can see here is that if I go back to my preview, is that I can see that validation was triggered for these mandatory fields, but what about my checkbox that's also made mandatory? Now, this field is not included in any push, but I still want my end user to tick this before triggering any of my pushes. So how can I ensure to validate, first of all, fields that are part of a push that happens later on in my action flow, as well as fields that are not included in my push at all? And so I'll show you how you can fix both of these scenarios with a simple action. If I head over to my button, I'll click X over here, and before I run my pushes, before I push to an account or run any push at all, I first want to make sure that I'm validating all of the fields that are necessary. And so I'll click on the plus here, and if we go to element interactivity, we should have here validate fields. Here it is. You can also, of course, search for validate fields, and that will come up as well. And I'm given the option to either validate all of the fields on my strip, on my page, a particular field, or a grouping of fields. So I can, for example, say I only want to validate first name and last name. Or I can say I only want to validate first name. In my case, I'm going to actually validate everything on my page, and I'm going to select the page that I want to validate. Of course, if I selected strip, it would be the current strip that this is run on, meaning wherever the button is placed, it would validate that strip. So in my case, I'm just going to do page and validate the entire page, and we'll say validate here. And now we can see the difference in outcome. Okay, note that I also have a few different outputs here. I can have actions run during the validation, regardless of whether it's valid or invalid. Okay, so let's just demonstrate that with a small toast. And we'll say running validation. This will always run. Okay. Let's also, on valid, let's allow our push to Salesforce or pushes to Salesforce to run. And on invalid, let's show some kind of message saying, please fix your fields. Great. Let's go ahead and run this. And now I'll enter a company name again, and I'll push to Salesforce. And as you can see, I did get my toast because that will run regardless of whether this is valid or not. I also got my message to tell me to fix my fields, and that's because I failed validation. If I head over to my integration logs now, I can see that this is my account that was created earlier. This was not created just now, and that prevented my account get from running entirely because of the fact that we triggered a validation action. So this saved us from creating an account without any contact related to it. And now I'll fill out some details for the contact. So we'll say, and okay, and some phone number. And now we'll try one more time to actually push this account and contact. And as you can see, it still did not let me, and that's because this field, even though it is not included in any push, is not ticked. And once I actually tick this field, now if I head over to integration logs and I refresh, I can see that finally an account was created in Salesforce with a contact. And that's how it's done.